Hey everyone, David C. Anderson here, coming at you from the Knife Center, and welcome to Knife AQ episode 125, the knife series where I answer all of your questions, whether they're sharp or dull. This week, we're going to be talking about the legend of the poop knife, but that's actually number 2. First things first, we've got some more of your questions, including some great ways to carry food prep knives on the go. We're going to talk a little bit about colors and kind of the gray man philosophy, just a little bit, and some other cool stuff too. So let's get right into it. All right, if you're new to this series, what we do is we take your questions and feature them for answers in this series. If you have a question and you would like it to be featured in this series, to have a shot at that, just leave it in the comments section below. That's where we find them. First question today comes from Wicked Revival. DCA and Thomas, I am a chef and motorcycle enthusiast. When I travel, sometimes staying in Airbnbs or cabins, I'm always lacking tools to prep meals for me and friends. I worry that if I bring any of my Wüsthof knives, they're going to end up out of the sheath and will pierce my clothes, or even worse, cutting me if I put my hand in there. So the question is, do you guys have a folding chef knife 6 to 8 inches that I can just put in my saddlebag or small luggage in any price tag, any price range? There are folding food prep knives. We've actually done a video on it. You can find a link over in that general area of the screen right here at the moment. But none of them are that large that I've seen. A 6 to 8 inch, I mean, any 6 inch plus folding knife is a vanishingly rare thing, no matter what style it is, and I certainly haven't seen any chefy type things. The easy answer, the cheapest answer is forget all that. Get yourself a blade safe for your Wüsthofs or whatever knives you want to take with you. These are about $6, I think, right now. And it's a hard plastic shell, and it'll fit. This is the 6 to 8 inch model, but this is actually an 8.5 inch shin care kitchen knife, which it looks really cool, by the way. But that's not what we're here to talk about. You simply place said knife in the blade safe, clasp it shut. It's held in place by a couple of rubber bits right there, and with 2 clicking retention points there. So it doesn't rattle around. The knife is not going to slide out. This is quite secure in a pack, in a box, in a saddlebag on your motorcycle. And there are a few sizes to suit any kind of different sized food prep knives you might want to bring with you. That's super easy. Like I said, $6. But I feel like you're looking for an excuse to buy another knife, and I can't fault you for that. I don't have a folder here, but what about this right here? The Artisan Cutlery Silex. These will run you about $70 nowadays, and it's a little bit smaller than your 6 to 8 inches. It's about just over a 5-inch blade, kind of a petty knife size or a station knife, prep knife style of size. But you've got a miniature-looking chef's knife type of style, essentially. Enough drop there. If you pinch the handles without wrapping your knuckles underneath, you can still do mincing cuts and rocking cuts like so. Pretty cool thing. RPM 9 powder metallurgy steel, and it comes with a Kydex sheath, just like that. Another very secure way to throw something in a bag, although I'd say the blade safe is even more secure, quite honestly. Check a couple of those options out. I think they could work out quite well for you. But if you want a folding food prep knife still, even though you're not going to get it in that size, make sure to check that video out that we pointed you to right there. Hope that helps. Next question comes from Chris McDougall. And this was in response to something we talked about last week, which is a topic we've touched on a number of times. But the fact that blue as a color on outdoor gear is a really good choice because it's very easy to see in the outdoors, and in many circumstances even easier to see than orange, which is kind of the typical or archetypal, stereotypical, that's the word, stereotypical high visibility color for outdoors usage. This was in response to that. Chris McDonald says, how come they don't use gray as a color in the woods? Welcome to Color Theory with David C. Anderson. This is our Color Theory AQ. No, I have a gray knife right here, and The thing you may notice about it is it's actually pretty unremarkable. The color, anyway. The knife it's not unremarkable, I should say. We had a blue-handled Demco Free Rein last week. They also do make a gray-handled one. And the gray is more intended to be surreptitious. It doesn't shout about itself. You think about that quote-unquote gray man concept where, the idea is, let's say you're the type of person that wants and likes to carry tactical gear around. Well, if things look too blatantly tactical, that actually can stick out like a sore thumb in an otherwise more mundane world. So you'd be the gray man. You have your stuff, but don't shout about it. Let's talk about gray in an outdoor scenario. There's a lot of gray in the wild. Rocks, certainly. A lot of rocks. Sand and soil can sometimes have a good gray consistency, and depending on the shadows, it can even be as dark as this handle right here, especially if there's a lot of clay in said soil. It's just not a color that's going to stand out on its own. And furthermore, speaking of a color theory sort of thing, anyone who's done any kind of photography and retouching especially will know that, especially if you're in an area, let's say you're in the woods and you have a lot of green leaf cover above you. Well, there's going to be a green cast to a lot of things, and gray, amidst other colors in nature, is going to kind of do the same thing. It's going to kind of pick up the colors around it, if there are any, and just disappear on you, quite honestly. A disappearing knife can be a good thing in certain circumstances, but for me, not what I prefer in an outdoors knife particularly. Doesn't mean you can't carry a gray knife in the outdoors, but that's why we don't talk about it as
you can. Just
highly visible color.
Best of luck to you.
You can, just don't put it down. Don't drop it, so to speak. There's good gray knives out there, believe me. But yeah, that would be why it's not a talked about color anyway. Which I think gets to what you're asking about. Next question comes from 54 and GT Go. Would a blade with a mirror edge perform worse in some situations than a Toothy factory grind? I recently got a Worksharp Precision Adjust sharpener. We have one over there. I should have put it here on the table. And made a very nice stropping stick. I want to drop the G on there. Call it the stropping stick. I like it. Now I can't stop sharpening and stropping all my blades to a mirror polish. D2, S30V, Crewwear, 420, 440, some unknown steels. I can't stop sharpening until the edge reflects the light as if it were chrome plated. Is there a detriment to what I'm doing? Well, theoretically, you could, I'll put the word could in quotes, in order to, as you progress towards that mirror edge, you could be removing more material, grinding through all the scratch marks from the previous grit. You are bound to go a little further than is necessary with each grit. Not that you're like over sharpening, but that's just kind of the nature of it. So theoretically, you could be shortening the usable life of your given blade because you will be, each sharpening session, you remove more steel, more metal, eating through it quicker. That's a theoretical. Now, as to the first part of your question, mirror edge versus a more toothy edge, again, this is something we've touched on previously, but I think it's always a good point to bring up. A mirror polished edge is something that tends to perform better compared to a toothy edge on push cuts. That's why you'll see a lot of times wood carving or whittling knives will often be made with a carbon steel, because simpler carbon steels especially are very easy to get a high polished finish on them. But when you're pushing through that nice, like razor apex with no kind of variations, just a clean laser sharp line is going to work great. And that's true not just for whittling, but think of an axe. That is a push cut. You're not slicing with it, you're pushing through something. Slicing, actually, let me tell you about this knife. It's pretty cool. Always a good chance to bring out a nice finish-made martini knife. This is the Arctic carving knife. It's like $50. Curly birch handles, carbon steel blade. Really, really cool piece. But a toothier edge, or a less polished edge, we'll say, I don't even want to say necessarily toothy in this scenario, can have a benefit, or more of a benefit, on a pull cut, on the actual slice, when you're dragging the edge across something rather than simply pushing it through with pressure. And that's because I wasn't going to use toothy, but the teeth the slighter irregularity can actually, think about it this way. If you were to magnify said edge and a high polished edge were a straight line, the slightly toothier edge might look like tiny, tiny serrations. It can help grab things a little better. And again, that's not just on a pull cut or a slice with a blade like this, but stuff like a machete, like a grass clearing machete especially, that is going to be slicing through things. It can pull on what you're slicing, whereas a higher polished edge, counterintuitively, can sometimes slip a little bit and glide across the surface rather than biting in if your angle's not quite right. So that would be the ultimate there. As far as your EDC stuff, probably not a terrible concern. And in fact, in most cases, to whatever degree your edge is polished or toothy, it's not necessarily, well, it's definitely not the end of the world. We'll put it that way. It can make greater or lesser degrees of difference depending on your application, depending on what kind of knife and how you're using it. But hope that helps.
Just get a serrated knife and you have two.
Yeah, but then you have a serrated knife.
And you can use it if you need.
Or you could have another plain edge knife. I like plain edge. Can you tell? Anyway.
You're weird.
Yeah, I'm weird. Okay. Measured once, cut twice is the name of this next segment where we take a second stab at a previous question. And this is one where I've got egg all over my face because I made a fatal error in our last FAQ. Maybe not fatal, I am still here standing, but one I am quite astonished that slipped past my brain. I don't know what I was thinking, but...
I don't either. I try not to.
We had a question last week where someone was asking about a knife to be carried cross-draw appendix, crossbody appendix style, and I talked about the knife being mounted at the small of your back, which is, of course, not appendix carry. That is, say it with me, scout carry. I can't believe I made the mistake. I think my advice still applied, and I'll touch on that again, but Scott Nardina is just one of many who corrected me. Am I going crazy? Crossbody appendix carry would be in the front and reaching across your belt buckle. No, you're not crazy. I went crazy. I was crazy at the time. Yes, because our questioner had what he eloquently referred to as tactical muffin top, a phrase which struck home to me very much. To carry something cross-draw at the front side of your body, my advice still applies. Look not necessarily towards the knife itself, that's going to come into play a little bit, but the sheath the knife comes with is going to be a bigger consideration than ultimately the knife itself, I think. And something like the SE3, he had talked about buying potentially an SE knife. This still has a wider platform. I had the Tops knife that we had here last week, but I think our shipping department needed it back and came and took it. So it's the difference, though, between this style of sheath that the Artisan Cutlery Silex comes with, which is a taco-style Kydex sheath, or, this isn't Kydex, but the same term applies, a pancake-style sheath such as this one. And yes, to one of our commenters out there, this is a pancake-style sheath. I've always referred to them thusly. I will not call it a sandwich-style sheath. It's a pancake sheath because it's a snack. Anyway, this is a bulkier sheath and is going to give you some more bulk to deal with, whereas something folded over on top, especially with a nice smooth edge like this, is going to be a little easier. I was talking about tech locks and other belt attachment hardware, which comes more into, or is less of an issue at the small of the back in scout carry, but can introduce more bulk, especially, well, it does introduce more bulk no matter where you put it, but on the front side, that's going to be more of a concern. Real easy way to make some belt loops on a sheath like this, thread some paracord through there. You can do it in an X pattern here on the front, and then you'll get yourself 2 loops on the back. Super easy, super minimal, no bulk whatsoever. So I apologize. The egg is on my face. Hopefully I've cleaned it sufficiently now. Thank you for everyone for keeping me straight. All right, now we come to our lightning round for today. First questions from A.E. Page. Is a full flat grind particularly difficult to do? I often find that full flat grind folders are in higher demand, but they seem to be less common than high flat grinds. Well, speaking as sort of a novice to intermediate level knife maker, probably more on the novice side, I can tell you that a full flat grind is actually easier in some ways than a high flat grind. pull two knives here that we had in our New Knives of the Week episode earlier. This is the Sencut Serene, and it is a full flat grind, as you can see. The advantage of, well, actually, let me start the other way. The Kaiser Original XL has a high flat grind. You can see the top of the grind line there. And when you can see the top of the grind line, you have to make sure that top of the grind line is ultra precise, or you're going to notice every little wobble. You know, you got to be real steady with pulling your grinds to pull that off. Whereas if you have a full flat grind, you don't see the top of the grind line. So you've got more room for error. You may see a little variation here at the edge in terms of thickness. You probably would if everything else is as precise as it should be, but easier to pull off while looking good. One or the other, like full flat versus partial flat, is only one aspect in knife geometry. I tend to like slicier things, but you know, a full flat grind on this Kaiser Original would be an iota slicier, but some say seeing the top of the grind looks a little more attractive. It definitely adds another character line to said blade. So, is it particularly hard to do? No, in fact, for a someone sitting at a grinder with making a knife, it's actually a little bit easier probably to do because you have more margin for error, as mentioned. Next question's from John. I noticed a lot of my new knives arrive very stiff and need some work to get a smooth and quick opening action. Do you have a standard routine to break in a new knife, or have any tips for getting a new knife up to EDC standards of smoothness? Well, everyone's standards of smoothness are, of course, different. But as for me, if the knife is not opening too well, first thing I do is I just open it and close it and 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 open it and close it.
Yeah, we've noticed.
And open it and close it, and my wife loves it. Sometimes I may put a drop of oil in the pivot with the knife open. Some people will go as far as taking the whole knife apart, lubricating all the bits inside, getting all the surfaces lubed up, and going from there. I've never really done that. I've never felt the need to, but again, everyone's standards of smoothness, of desired smoothness, are different. But a lot of the times, just working the action will make a difference. And now we come to our final question of the day, which is, of course, our most serious question of the day, which comes from PNW Fun Stuff. What knife would you fidget with whilst sitting upon thine toilet? Yes. Immediately I thought of the poop knife. You may have seen this. If you haven't, you can look it up. It went viral a number of years ago. Just search poop knife. You'll find it. It's about a family who traditionally kept a knife, bladed type implement near the porcelain throne to break up particularly large deposits of material, shall we say, to aid in flushing them away. I don't know if that's necessary for everyone, but we've never talked about the poop knife on this channel. I'm kind of surprised.
125 episodes, we finally got there.
Finally got there. What do you folks think about the poop knife? But to get to the heart of your question, the nugget of your question, I should say, what knife would I fidget with while sitting upon thine toilet? Whatever I happen to be carrying on said day. I'll open it and close it, and open it and close it, and open it and close it. And my wife would be like, "Why were you playing with a knife in there?" And it's my job. I'm good at what I do because I handle knives all the time.
Clock out already, man.
It's more experience. But in an endeavor to give you a true answer, I'd say anything that, like this Hogue EX-A01, that has a harpoon tip would be ideal because it's got the word poo in it. Hope that helps. And make sure you wash your hands and use soap. That's all we've got for today, folks. Keep leaving your questions down in the comments section below. If you have some thoughts on the answers today, let me know. If you have some alternate answers, drop them down there as well. To get your hands on any of these knives right here, we will leave links in the description that take you to KnifeCenter.com. And don't forget, of course, about our Knife Rewards program, because if you're going to buy one of these knives today, you might as well earn some free money to spend on your next ones. I'm David C. Anderson from the Knife Center. That's Thomas behind the camera. We're signing out. See you next time.